Did you ever do the Bloody Mary challenge? Now, the legend goes that if you were to turn off the lights and say her name 3 times into the mirror, then she might appear. Sometimes it was said that she would rip out your eyes. Sometimes it was said that she would pull you into the mirror. Now, who was Mary? Some people believe that she could be traced back to the 1800s to a woman named Mary Worth, who lived in a small town in New England. And the story goes that the townspeople thought she was a witch. And when children started to disappear, they suspected that it was Mary Worth. So when they go to her house, they were shocked to discover she was using the blood to bathe in because she thought it would make her younger. So it's said that she was taken and burned at the stake. And her last words were, if you were to say her name in the mirror, then she would return. Some people also speculate that it might come from the 1800s belief that the widows would often call to their deceased husbands in the mirrors, thinking they would return, only to see something else. Now, there was a story from this girl named Ashley. She said when she was younger, she remembered being at school, and she went into the girls' bathroom one day. Well, she overheard some girls laughing and giggling, and she said they were doing the whole Mary thing. So she kind of stayed there and listened to them. She said they did it 3 times, and all of a sudden, the lights went out in the bathroom. She heard these girls start screaming, and finally the lights came back on, and she said the girls started to look at her and were like, did you see her? Did you see her? And she's like, who? And they said, there was a girl right next to you when the lights went out. And she kind of looked around and was like, no, there wasn't. And she said these girls ran out of the bathroom screaming. She stayed behind. She went to go wash her hands. And she said as she looked up in the mirror, she sees this woman with black hair covering her face, wearing this white dress, just standing there behind her in the mirror. She took off running out of the bathroom screaming. And she said she told her teacher. Teacher went in the bathroom. They couldn't find anyone. There was another story from a girl named Caitlin. Caitlin said that her and her brother used to joke around and they would do the whole Mary thing. Well, she said one day she went into the bathroom and she said it 2 times. But she said, you know what, this is ridiculous. And she kind of forgot about it. Well, she said later that night, she went into the bathroom to take a shower. She said as she walked by the mirror, she said it one last time. And she said she got into the shower, and as she turned on the water, the lights went out. She said next thing she knew, the shower curtain fell all the way to the ground, and she ran out of the bathroom screaming. And her mom went in there, she looked, she didn't see anything. Well, she said she told her brother about this, and her brother was like, you're making this up. So about a week later, they're home alone, and they're sitting down in the living room watching a movie, when all of a sudden, they hear the shower turn on upstairs. And they're like, who is in the bathroom? And then they start hearing these cries, like a woman wailing. So they both go upstairs, they go by the bathroom, they slowly open the door, and they said as they went to the curtains and pulled it back, they looked and there was no one there. They ran out of the house until their parents got back. She said a couple weeks later, she was in her bedroom. It's the middle of the night. She hears the shower kick on by itself. So she goes to the bathroom, and she said when she opened the curtain this time, she's seen a woman in a white dress with black hair covering her face laying in the bathtub. So what do you think? Is the legend real? Now, this takes place near Ponchatoula, Idaho. There was this man named Kevin. Kevin said that he grew up very close to Ponchatoula in this small little town. And so when he was younger, he remembers a period of time where several people in the town had disappeared. And it was kind of the talk of the whole entire town. Now, his father told him to be very careful, like don't go out in the woods alone, and to just make sure that he continuously checked in and told him that he was safe. Well, he said there was this kid in town that ended up becoming his friend. Everybody called him Billy the Kid because he wore this cowboy hat and this handkerchief. And he said, him and Billy had all these adventures. They would go out into the woods and they would find cool stuff and build forts. We said one day Billy went out into the woods alone and he never returned. They searched for weeks but never found him. So about 6 or 7 months after Billy had disappeared, Kevin decides he's going to go look for his friend. He sets off into the woods and he hikes for about 3 hours. He gets to the spot where there's this very large hill. And he said it was kind of overlooking a bunch of low-lying areas. So he goes onto the top of this hill and he gets some binoculars out of his satchel. And he started to look through the binoculars and see if maybe he could see his friend. He said he took one step forward and he misstepped, and he started to tumble all the way down this hill. Well, he gets to the bottom and he realizes he has hurt his leg and he's having trouble walking. So he, starts crawling, manages to get up, and he starts kind of hobbling. And he thinks, like, what do I do? I'm hurt. I'm in the middle of the woods. Like, no one's going to find me. Like, he starts to panic. But then he sees a cabin off in the distance. And he said there was smoke coming out of the chimney. So he sets off to this cabin as fast as he can, hobbling along. When he makes it to the front porch, he gets ready to knock on the door, but he realizes the door is slightly open. So he pushes it open the rest of the way, and he goes inside, and he sees that this cabin is abandoned. There are cobwebs over everything, and everything looks dusty and sort of falling apart. But the interesting thing was there was no fire in the fireplace, yet he could see smoke from the chimney. So he's like, how in the world would that be possible? So he manages to come inside, and he says, you know what, I'm just going to have to wait till tomorrow morning and then try and make it home. So nightfall comes, and he's just kind of huddled up, trying to keep warm in this creaky old cabin. So that's when he began to hear a humming sound, and it was coming from outside. Now, the door didn't latch, it didn't close, so this door is partially open. He said he started to hear the humming sound even louder, like whatever this was, it was very close. So that's when he heard his friend's, Billy's voice say, Kevin, come outside. And he's like, Billy, is that you? Like, where have you been? Like, oh, I found you. And he was like excited. So he gets up and he kind of hobbles to the front door and he opens it up. And standing in front of the cabin is his friend Billy, except he looked completely different. His face was all pale. His lips were blue. He just looked off. And he said, standing behind him were all of these people. And he said, Billy, what are you doing? Like, you've been lost for like months. Like, where have you been? And he said, I've been playing in the woods. And you can come and play with me. And you could stay here with me. But you just got to follow me into the woods. And he's like, what is in the woods? Like, we need to go home. Like, come in the cabin. We'll wait. And in the morning, we'll leave. And he said, no, you don't understand. If you want to stay with me, you have to come with me and my friends into the woods. He said that's when he realized all these people standing around him were the people that had gone missing. So he turns and he just takes off into the woods, hobbling along as best he can. And he made it all the way to a road. And he sees a car coming down. He flags him down and he gets in and gets a ride back to his house. And he said he never went back to that place again. He never told anyone about the cabin. And he always wondered what happened to his friend and who are those people, like were they ghosts or something. A lot of people believe in something called the Dogman. Now, the Dogman was first seen in Michigan, and this is sort of a hot spot for sightings. The Dogman is a dog-like version of Bigfoot. Now, there was a story out of northern Michigan. There was this boy who said that him, his brother, and his father, every couple weeks, they would go out to this property that his father owned, and they would gather firewood. And he said his dad had this big trailer that they would fill all the way to the top. And when it was full, they would leave. Well, this particular night, him and his brother and his father, they go to this spot in the middle of their property, and they start chopping wood. And it started to get dark, but by this time, they had only filled up half the trailer. But he said his father started to get really nervous. And all of a sudden, he tells him and his brother, I want you to get in the car immediately. Don't look back. Don't say anything. Get in the car, lock the doors, and be quiet. And so he started, to kind of pick up his axe and pick up some of the tools. And his dad's like, no, just leave them. Take your brother, run to the front of the car, get inside and lock the door. So he just grabs his brother and they started running to the front of this truck. As they're running, he said he kind of glanced over and he could see shadows of something moving through the woods, kind of following them. So him and his brother, they jump in the truck. He locks the doors. And he said, there was just this really bad feeling in the air, like something was going to happen. And he said, all of a sudden, they hear boom, 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 boom. His dad is banging on the window. Let me in the truck. So his dad jumps in the truck and he starts the car or the truck up and they take off. and his dad is just speeding, and this trailer is thrashing back and forth, almost getting ready to fall off. And his father doesn't care. And he said, it was strange because normally they wouldn't leave till that trailer was full. And he said, as his father's driving, up this bumpy dirt road, all of a sudden, this crashing sound, like something hits the front of the vehicle. And his father slams on the brakes. And as they look on the hood of this truck, there is a rotten carcass sitting there. Something threw this rotten deer carcass at the front of this vehicle. And he said that's when they heard this loud roar. And as they looked over, they seen what looked like a dog standing on two legs. And so his dad hit the gas and he starts speeding off out of there. And this thing begins to chase them. And it was keeping pace with the vehicle for some time. He said eventually it broke off and it went into the woods. And his father just kept on driving. And they kept asking his father, what was that? What happened? And his father said, just be quiet. Like, you don't need to know. Let's not talk about it. And his father never told him what he had seen that night. This story takes place in Peoria, Illinois. Now, just outside of town, there was this husband and wife who were driving late one night, headed to work. And they happened to be going down this road that was just nothing but cornfields and sort of forest off in the distance. It was slightly snowing and it was a really cold night. As they're making their way down this road, they begin to experience car trouble. So he veers off onto the shoulder and eventually the car gives out. He gets out of the car, he pops the hood, and he goes around and starts seeing if he can figure out what was going on. As he's working on the car, he said he got this just eerie feeling and his body just started to get the chills. And that's when he turned, and standing there were three teenagers. They were wearing these black hoodies with the hoods up, and he said he could barely see their face. He said the one in the front says, "Could you give us a ride?" And he's like, obviously I can't give you a ride. My car's broke down. He said, "Go and try and start it." And he's like, okay. And he said the ones in the back, they were kind of like, go, chanting, kind of almost like telling him to go into the car. So he was a little freaked out, and he's like, okay, whatever, I'll give it a try. So he goes back in the car, he gets in, turns the key in the ignition, boom, the car starts right up. And right as the car started up, he turns to the driver's side window, and there are these three teenagers. And he said the one was just kind of up against the window. And he rolls down his window and was like, "Hey, thanks, that worked. But look, I got my wife with me. It's the middle of the night. I don't know who you guys are. Like, I got my phone here. I'll call someone for you, but I can't give you a ride. I don't feel comfortable with that." And they're like, "No, you have to give us a ride." And he's like, No, I told you, I'm not giving you a ride. And he said, "Just give us a ride. We can't come in unless you invite us." And he's like, "Yeah, I know, but I'm not inviting you." And he said that's when they're like, "I don't think you understand." And they got a little closer to the window, and that's when he could see they had these solid, dark, black eyes. And he could tell this wasn't an actual teenager, like this was something else. And he rolls up his window, and he starts panicking, like, what do we do? What do we do? These kids start getting angry, banging on the window, shaking the car, screaming. And this couple is just completely terrified. Thankfully, a car happens to come down the road and stop right next to him. At this point in time, these three teenagers are gone. This guy gets out of the truck and is like, "Hey, are you all right? Did you break down?" He's like, "Yeah, car broke down, but it started now. But there are these three teenagers out here and they're like harassing me." So they start looking around, and in all directions, you could just see because it was cornfields. They were nowhere to be found. And this guy ended up following him all the way back into town. And he said for several weeks, he just kept having dreams about those eyes, which reminded him so much of like a rabbit's eye.